It's funny how some buildings can hold both your best and worst memories. Standing in the lobby of Harrison Industries headquarters, I felt the weight of both. 25 years of being the family disappointment and 5 years of secretly becoming their worst nightmare. I'm Elizabeth Harrison, though my family barely acknowledges our shared last name anymore. To them, I'm just the daughter who couldn't hack it in the family business, who walked away to play entrepreneur instead of accepting my place in their corporate hierarchy. If they only knew that I now owned Phoenix Global, the company about to acquire their failing empire. The security guard glanced at my visitor badge with thinly veiled disdain. The executive meeting is in the main boardroom. Kitchen's down the hall, past the elevators. I nodded, suppressing a smile. 5 years ago, that dismissal would have stung. Now it was almost amusing. Thank you, I know the way. I did know the way, both to the kitchen where they expected me to wait, and to the boardroom where tomorrow's acquisition papers would be signed. Papers that would put me in control of everything. Beth. My brother Andrew's voice carried down the marble hallway. What are you doing here? I turned to face him, taking in his perfectly tailored suit and gold Rolex. The uniform of Harrison's success. Dad invited me to the meeting. His laugh was sharp, practiced. The board meeting? Come on, Beth. This is serious business. We're discussing the Phoenix Global offer. And what do you think about their offer? I kept my voice neutral, remembering the mountain of evidence I collected about Harrison Industries' financial mismanagement, most of it bearing Andrew's signature. They're vultures, he sneered, trying to steal our company for pennies on the dollar. But don't worry your pretty little head about it. The kitchen is where you belong. Successful people only in the boardroom. If he only knew that vulture company had spent the past 3 years systematically acquiring Harrison's debt, buying out their major clients, and positioning itself for this exact moment. Beth. Our father's voice boomed from the boardroom doorway. William Harrison, CEO of Harrison Industries, looked exactly as I remembered. Commanding presence, silver hair, and eyes that could freeze hell. You came. You asked me to, I said simply. He checked his gold watch. Identical to Andrew's, a family tradition for male executives. The meeting's about to start. Why don't you wait in the kitchen? Margaret can bring you coffee. I thought about the past 5 years, building Phoenix Global in secret, orchestrating deals that made Harrison Industries look like a corner store, all while letting them believe I was barely scraping by with a small consulting business. I had just opened my mouth to respond when Harrison Industries CFO, David Chen, hurried down the hallway clutching a stack of papers. His face was pale, stressed. Mr. Harrison, he called out, we need to discuss these numbers before the meeting. The projections. Not now, David. My father's tone was sharp. We have more important matters to discuss. The Phoenix offer. Is an insult. Andrew interrupted. We're worth 10 times what they're offering. I had to bite my tongue. I knew exactly what Harrison Industries was worth. I'd spent years analyzing every detail, every weakness, every skeleton in their corporate closet. The kitchen, Beth, my father reminded me firmly, this isn't your concern. I walked toward the kitchen, their voices fading behind me. 5 years ago, this dismissal would have broken my heart. Now it was just the calm before the storm. The kitchen was exactly as I remembered, all stainless steel and granite, rarely used since executives ordered in for every meal. Margaret, the office manager who'd worked here since I was a child, looked up in surprise. Beth, is that really you? I smiled, embracing her warmly. She had been one of the few people who showed me kindness after I left the family business. Hello, Margaret. Still keeping this place running? She sighed, glancing toward the boardroom. Trying to. Things aren't good, though they'd never admit it. Your brother, she lowered her voice. His decisions haven't all been wise. I knew exactly which decision she meant. The failed expansion into South America. The disastrous merger with Tech Solutions. The string of discrimination lawsuits that had been quietly settled. All documented in Phoenix Global's due diligence report. I heard about the Phoenix offer, Margaret continued, pouring me coffee. Between us, we need it. The company's bleeding money, no matter what your father says. Is that why Dad invited me today? To witness their triumph over another takeover attempt. Margaret's expression turned knowing. Actually, he didn't invite you. David did, said it was important you be here. That was interesting. David Chen had been Harrison Industries' CFO for 15 years. He was also the only person who knew the true extent of the company's financial troubles. My phone buzzed. A message from my assistant at Phoenix. All board votes confirmed. Contracts prepared for tomorrow. I smiled, remembering Andrew's smirk. Successful people only in the boardroom. Well, tomorrow they'd learn what real success looked like. Through the kitchen door, I could hear the board meeting starting. My father's voice carried clearly, still a commanding presence, still convinced he could control everything. As you know, we've received a hostile takeover bid from Phoenix Global. While the price might seem attractive to some, Harrison Industries doesn't need saving. We've weathered storms before. Andrew's voice chimed in. Exactly. This company was built by Harrisons, and it will stay in Harrison hands. Their confidence would have been admirable if it wasn't so misplaced. They had no idea that their company had been hemorrhaging money for years, that their major clients were already contracted with Phoenix, that tomorrow's vote was a mere formality. The kitchen door swung open and David slipped in looking harried. He froze when he saw me, then quickly closed the door behind him. Ms. Harrison, he said quietly, or should I say, Ms. Phoenix. I set down my coffee cup. How long have you known? He smiled tiredly. I've tracked Phoenix Global's acquisitions for years. The pattern, the strategy, it all had your fingerprints. When I saw the offer, I knew. Does anyone else know? No, but they will tomorrow, won't they? I leaned against the counter. They left me no choice, David. Andrew's running this company into the ground, and Dad's too proud to stop him. He nodded. I know. That's why I made sure you were here today. They need to see, they need to understand what they've lost. Through the door, Andrew's voice rose excitedly. In fact, I'd just closed a deal that will show Phoenix exactly who they're dealing with. The Jensen merger. I winced. The Jensen merger. A desperate attempt to save the company that would have bankrupted Harrison Industries if Phoenix hadn't already arranged to block it. David checked his watch. The CFO of Phoenix should be calling any minute to discuss Jensen. Right on cue, my phone rang. I answered, putting it on speaker. Go ahead, Marcus. Ms. Phoenix, the Jensen contracts have been terminated as arranged. Would you like me to inform Harrison Industries now or wait until tomorrow's board meeting? David's eyes widened at my title. Even he hadn't known I was CEO. Now is fine, I said loud enough to carry through the door. They should know exactly who they're dealing with. The kitchen door burst open. Andrew stood there, face twisted with rage. What did you just say? Who are you talking to? I stood up slowly, smoothing my simple dress. Marcus, please hold. I believe I'll deliver this news in person. Walking past my stunned brother, I entered the boardroom where my father and the board members sat in frozen silence. For the first time in 5 years, I took my place at the head of the table. The Jensen merger is dead, I announced calmly. Just like every other desperate attempt to save this company will be. Unless, of course, you accept Phoenix's offer. My father's face had turned ashen. What are you talking about? How do you know about Jensen? I smiled, thinking of all the times they'd sent me to the kitchen, dismissed my ideas, treated me as less than nothing. Because, Dad, I'm the CEO of Phoenix Global. And tomorrow, one way or another, this company will be mine. The boardroom fell silent as my words echoed off the mahogany walls. 20 faces stared at me, expressions ranging from shock to horror to dawning comprehension. My father's hands gripped the arms of his chair so tightly his knuckles had turned white. Andrew had stumbled back against the wall, his earlier arrogance evaporating like morning dew. Marcus, I spoke into the phone, still on speaker. Send in the transition team. Right away, Ms. Phoenix. My father found his voice first. This is impossible. Phoenix Global is worth billions. You're just. Just what, Dad? I met his gaze steadily. Just the daughter you sent to the kitchen? Just the failure who walked away from the family business? The boardroom doors opened and my team walked in, senior executives from Phoenix, legal counsel, financial analysts. All people who had worked with me for years, who knew exactly who I was and what I was capable of. Ladies and gentlemen, I addressed the board. You have less than 24 hours to accept Phoenix's offer. If you refuse, we'll proceed with our alternative strategy. Andrew let out a strangled laugh. Alternative strategy? What alternative strategy? I nodded to my CFO, who distributed folders to each board member. Over the past 3 years, Phoenix Global has systematically acquired controlling interests in your major clients' companies. We've also purchased a significant portion of your debt. If you reject our offer, we'll simply redirect the business elsewhere." The board members flipped through the documents, their faces growing paler with each page. They were seeing the truth. How thoroughly I had outmaneuvered them. How completely I controlled their fate. "This is blackmail," Andrew shouted, finding his courage again. "You can't just walk in here and—" "Actually, I can, and I have." I pulled out another folder. "Would you like to discuss the Jensen merger, brother? Or perhaps we should talk about the discrimination lawsuits you thought you buried." He sank into the nearest chair, the blood draining from his face. My father stood slowly, his authority crumbling before my eyes. "Why, Beth? If you wanted to come back." "Come back?" I cut him off. "To what? Another lecture about knowing my place? Another reminder that real business is for the men in the family?" I gestured to my team. "I built something better. Something you never thought I could do." David, still standing by the door, cleared his throat. "The company's finances. They're worse than anyone here knows. Without this merger—" "Shut up," Andrew snapped. "We don't need your money." "Actually," I said quietly, "you do. Your last 3 quarters have shown significant losses. The Jensen merger would have bankrupted you. Your stock price is about to plummet when the market opens tomorrow." I paused. "Unless, of course, you announce your merger with Phoenix Global." One of the board members, an elderly man who had known me since childhood, spoke up. "The terms of the acquisition, they're fair?" I nodded. "More than fair. Phoenix will absorb all debt, protect all jobs except senior management, and maintain the Harrison name on subsidiary projects." I met my father's eyes. "I'm not here to destroy what you built. I'm here to save it from those who never understood its true value." The room erupted in whispered conversations. Board members huddled over documents, analyzing numbers they should have questioned years ago. My father stood frozen, watching his empire slip through his fingers. Andrew, desperate now, tried one last play. "The shareholders won't allow this. The Harrison name means nothing without results," I finished. "Check your phones, everyone. The Asian markets just opened. News of the Jensen merger failure should be hitting any moment." As if on cue, phones began buzzing around the room. The color draining from faces as board members saw their stock price beginning its predicted dive. "Time's up," I announced. "You have 2 choices. Accept Phoenix's offer now, before the U.S. markets open, or watch this company collapse by closing bell." The board chairman cleared his throat. "I move we vote immediately on the Phoenix acquisition offer." "Seconded," came several voices at once. My father held up his hand. "Wait. Just wait." He turned to me, and for the first time in my life, I saw something new in his eyes, respect, tinged with fear. "All this time you were planning this?" "No, Dad, I was building something successful. Something meaningful. The fact that it led here," I shrugged. "That's just business." The vote was quick and unanimous. Even Andrew, seeing the writing on the wall, raised his hand in favor. Within an hour, papers were signed, press releases drafted, and Harrison Industries officially became a subsidiary of Phoenix Global. As the board members filed out, many stopping to shake my hand with newfound deference, Margaret appeared at the door. Her eyes were bright with pride. "I knew you were meant for more than the kitchen," she whispered, hugging me tight. Andrew was the last to leave, his swagger replaced by a defeated shuffle. At the door, he paused. "Was any of it real? Your struggling entrepreneur act?" "Every great CEO knows the value of market research," I replied. "I learned exactly how this company was being run by watching from the kitchen." Only my father remained, standing at the window that overlooked the city skyline. "What happens now?" "Now," I joined him at the window, "now we rebuild. Make this company what it should have been, one that values merit over gender, innovation over tradition." "And us? Your family?" I thought about all the family dinners where my ideas were dismissed, all the meetings I was barred from, all the times I was told to know my place. "You'll always be my father," I said finally. "But this?" I gestured to the boardroom. "This is business. And in business, I stopped being just your daughter a long time ago." He nodded slowly, understanding at last. "When did you become this?" "I always was this, Dad. You just never bothered to look past your own expectations to see it." The next few months transformed Harrison Industries. Under Phoenix's leadership, toxic management was cleared out, Innovative projects were given priority, and the company's value steadily climbed. Andrew found himself working under a female VP half his age, learning what real business acumen looked like. My father retired, though we both knew it wasn't really his choice. He sent me message after message, trying to rebuild our relationship now that he understood my true capabilities. But some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt with simple apologies. 1 year later, I stood in my office at Phoenix's headquarters, looking out over the city. My assistant entered with the morning reports. "Your brother's here to see you," she said quietly. "Says it's important." I smiled, remembering his words from that day. "The kitchen is where you belong. Successful people only in the boardroom." "Tell him he can wait in the kitchen," I replied. "I'm busy running a successful company. Success isn't about proving others wrong. It's about proving yourself right. Sometimes you have to leave the table where you're not welcome to build your own empire. And sometimes, the best revenge isn't taking over the family business. It's making them realize they never really knew what business was at all." Walking back to my desk, I passed the wall of photos in my office. Unlike the sterile corporate portraits that had lined Harrison Industries halls, these showed real achievements, groundbreaking ceremonies, charity initiatives, the faces of employees whose lives we changed. Success built on merit, not manipulation. My phone buzzed. Another message from my father. "The door will always be open for you to come home." I thought about their boardroom door, which had been closed to me for so many years. The one that only opened when they realized who I had become. I typed a simple response. "I am home, in the boardroom where I belong." Then I turned back to my work. I had an empire to run, and this time, no one would ever send me to the kitchen again. Because in the end, true success isn't about where they tell you to sit. It's about where you choose to stand. And I chose to stand at the head of the table, signing the checks that remind them exactly who I've become. As for the kitchen, I still visit sometimes. Not because anyone sends me there, but because that's where I learned my most valuable business lesson. The people at the top don't always see what's really going on. But if you're willing to start at the bottom, learn every detail, and work harder than anyone else, one day you might just find yourself signing their checks. And that's a business lesson even my family had to respect. The mahogany-paneled walls of Mitchell & Sons real estate seemed to close in around me as I placed my company keycard on my father's desk. 25 years of grooming for succession, ended by a food truck and a dream. "This is absolutely ridiculous, Sophia," my father growled, his face turning that dangerous shade of red I remembered from childhood disappointments. "You want to throw away a $100 million real estate empire to sell tacos from a truck." I stood my ground, though my hands trembled slightly. "They're not just tacos, Dad. My fusion recipes." He slammed his hand on the desk, making his top real estate mogul award rattle. "Your grandmother's recipes aren't going to pay for your lifestyle. This company is your birthright, your future." Behind him, floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of downtown Boston, dotted with buildings that bore the Mitchell & Sons logo. 3 generations of my family had built this empire. I was supposed to be the 4th. "I've already signed the lease for my first truck," I said quietly, "and I'm keeping my personal savings, but I don't want any company shares or family money. I need to do this on my own." My father's voice turned cold. "If you walk out that door, don't expect any help when this crazy food scheme fails. No trust fund, no safety net." "I know." I turned to leave, then paused. "Just remember, Dad, Grandma started this company selling one house at a time when everyone said a woman couldn't succeed in real estate. Sometimes the crazy schemes are the ones that work." My mother was waiting in the lobby, tears in her eyes. "Darling, please reconsider. Your brother Thomas would love to have you run the residential division while he handles commercial." Of course he would. Thomas, with his Harvard MBA and perfect corporate image, wanted nothing more than to relegate me to the smaller, feminine side of the business. "I'm sure it'll do great with both divisions," I said, hugging her goodbye. "But I need to follow my own path." As I walked out of Mitchell & Sons for the last time, I thought about the journey that had led to this moment. Growing up, I'd split my time between luxury real estate open houses and my grandmother's kitchen. While my father taught me about property values and market trends, Grandma Elena taught me about the power of food to bring people together. She'd emigrated from Mexico with nothing but her recipes and determination, married my grandfather, and helped him turn one small real estate office into an empire. But in private moments, she'd tell me how much she missed the joy of cooking for others. "Money builds houses, my amour," she'd say as we made her secret mole sauce. "But food builds homes." I'd gone to business school as expected, earned my MBA, and taken my place at Mitchell & Sons. But every evening, I'd experiment in my kitchen, combining Grandma Elena's traditional recipes with influences from my travels and culinary classes. My food blog gained a following. Pop-up dinner events sold out instantly. Then came the night that changed everything. I was hosting a private dinner for some of Boston's top food critics under my online pseudonym, The Fusion Foodie, when Thomas burst in. "Sophia, you're going to be late for the board meeting. What are you doing playing restaurant?" The critics looked up in surprise. One of them, Janet Chen from Boston Food Monthly, set down her fork. "You're Sophia Mitchell?" "From Mitchell & Sons Real Estate." I nodded, heart sinking. My cover was blown. But instead of mockery, Janet's eyes lit up. "This coconut mole sauce with lemongrass short ribs is revolutionary. Why aren't you doing this professionally?" That question haunted me for weeks. Why wasn't I? Because of family expectations? Fear of failure? Or just inertia? The answer came in the form of a for lease sign on an old food truck. Within a month, I had a business plan, designs for my Fusion Fiesta branding, and a growing sense of excitement I hadn't felt in years of real estate deals. Now, watching the Mitchell & Sons building recede in my rearview mirror, I felt a strange mixture of terror and liberation. My newly purchased food truck sat in a storage lot across town, waiting for renovations. My savings would cover startup costs and 6 months of living expenses. After that, I was on my own. My phone buzzed with a text from Thomas. "Dad's furious. Come back and apologize before you ruin everything." I turned the phone off and drove to the storage lot. The food truck was a 1975 model that needed serious work, but it had good bones, kind of like the rundown properties Dad had taught me to see potential in. "Well, old girl," I patted its rusty side, ready to start an empire of our own. The next month was a crash course in everything that business school hadn't taught me. I learned to fix plumbing, install kitchen equipment, and navigate the maze of food service regulations. My hands, once manicured for real estate showings, became callous from manual labor. Every evening, I experimented with recipes in my drastically downsized apartment kitchen. Grandma Elena's traditional Mexican dishes merged with Asian, Mediterranean, and American influences. The coconut mole sauce that had impressed Janet Chen became my signature, along with Korean bulgogi tacos and Thai basil empanadas. The Mitchell family grapevine kept me informed of the fallout for my departure. Dad had written me out of his will. Thomas was strutting around the office like he orchestrated my exit. Mom was telling her friends I was finding myself. None of them believed I would succeed. But then again, none of them had tasted my food. Finally, after weeks of preparation, health inspections, and test runs, Fusion Fiesta was ready for its debut. I'd chosen a spot near the financial district where hungry office workers might be willing to try something different for lunch. The night before my first service, I visited Grandma Elena. At 92, she was still sharp as ever, living in the penthouse apartment she'd bought with her first major real estate commission. "They think I'm crazy," I told her as we sat on her balcony. "Maybe I am." She took my hand, examining the burns and calluses with approval. "Your grandfather thought I was crazy too when I used my cooking money to put a down payment on that first office building. Sometimes crazy is just another word for brave." She pressed a small notebook into my hands, her personal recipe book, the one even my father hadn't been allowed to touch. "Now these belong to someone who will use them with love." Dawn found me parked in my designated spot, prepping ingredients with shaking hands. Would anyone even show up? Had I just committed career suicide? At 11:30, I opened the window and waited. The lunch crowd began trickling past, most ignoring the new food truck. Then a familiar face appeared. Janet Chen, the food critic. I heard through the grapevine that the Fusion Foodie was going mobile. She smiled. "One of everything, please." As she ate, a small crowd gathered, watching her reaction. Her eyes closed in pleasure at the first bite of my coconut mole short rib taco. "Absolutely magnificent," she declared loudly. "Worth leaving real estate for." By 12:30, I had a line around the block. By 2 o'clock, I was sold out completely. That evening, exhausted but exhilarated, I checked my phone for the first time all day. 20 missed calls from family members, all probably reading Janet Chen's live tweeted review of my food truck debut. But I wasn't interested in their opinions anymore. I was too busy planning tomorrow's menu, calculating ingredient orders, and dreaming about a second truck. Sometimes leaving everything behind is just the first step toward building something better. I might not be selling million-dollar properties anymore. But as I counted my first day's earnings, I realized something. I'd never felt more like a true Mitchell entrepreneur. Janet Chen's review turned out to be just the beginning. Within a week, every major food blog in Boston had featured Fusion Fiesta. The lines got longer, the wait times increased, and soon I had regulars who would spend their entire lunch break just to get my coconut mole tacos. But success brought its own challenges. My brother Thomas started sending employees to spy on my operation, taking photos and noting down prices. Then suddenly, 3 new Fusion food trucks appeared in nearby spots, all owned by shell companies I traced back to Mitchell & Sons. Really, Thomas? I confronted him over the phone. Food trucks? What happened to them being beneath the Mitchell name? Just protecting our market share, he replied smoothly. Nothing personal, sis. Business is business. But their trucks failed within months. It turned out that authentic fusion cuisine required more than just copying recipes and branding. It needed heart, passion, and the years I'd spent perfecting each dish. A year into my new venture, I had 3 trucks of my own, each with carefully trained staff and strict quality control. My original truck, which I still operated personally, had become a sort of test kitchen where I developed new recipes. That's when the real estate market started to shift. Commercial properties that Mitchell & Sons had heavily invested in began losing tenants as companies moved toward remote work. The residential division, which Thomas had always treated as secondary, was plagued by high interest rates and nervous buyers. I heard about their troubles through Grandma Elena, who still held a significant ownership stake in the company. Your father won't admit it, she told me over Sunday dinner, but they're over-leveraged. Thomas took too many risks, borrowed too much. I nodded, thinking about the business lessons I'd learned from running my food trucks. Bigger isn't always better. No, my amour. Sometimes the strongest businesses grow like good recipes, slowly, with care and attention. By then, Fusion Fiesta had evolved beyond just trucks. I'd opened a small test kitchen that offered cooking classes. Our catering division was booked months in advance for corporate events and weddings. I'd even started bottling my signature sauces, which now sold in specialty food stores across New England. Then came the opportunity I'd never expected. A prime corner property in downtown Boston, once home to a prestigious restaurant, went up for sale. The location was perfect, the bones of the building were solid, and thanks to the market downturn, the price was reasonable. I scheduled a viewing, only to find my father and Thomas already there, arguing with the realtor. Sophia, my father's face darkened. This isn't a place for food trucks. Mitchell & Sons is buying this building. Actually, the realtor interjected, Ms. Mitchell's offer has already been accepted. Her financing is solid, and her business plan for the space is exactly what the sellers were hoping for. The look on their faces was priceless. I used my real estate training and connections to secure an SBA loan, leveraging Fusion Fiesta's proven track record and strong financials. The food truck they dismissed had given me the credentials to buy a $1 million property. The renovation took 6 months. I kept all 4 food trucks running while overseeing every detail of the restaurant's design. The grand dining room would showcase elevated versions of our street food menu. The basement would become a teaching kitchen for cooking classes. The roof would host a garden for fresh ingredients. Opening night was fully booked weeks in advance. Every food critic in Boston attended, along with local celebrities and business leaders. But the guests I was most nervous about were my parents and Thomas, who had surprisingly accepted my invitation. They sat at the best table, watching as plate after plate emerged from the kitchen. My coconut mole short ribs, now plated with traditional Mexican rice and Asian picked vegetables. Korean bulgogi tacos elevated with homemade kimchi and Grandma Elena's special salsa. Thai basil empanadas served with cucumber mint relish. This is extraordinary, my mother finally said, emotion in her voice. You've created something remarkable, Sophia. Thomas pushed his plate away, but I could see he cleaned it completely. The location certainly helps, though commercial real estate is still is struggling, I finished. I know, I've been watching the market. My father set down his fork, studying me with new eyes. You have, haven't you? Just like we taught you. That's when I laid my proposal on the table. A detailed analysis of Mitchell & Sons' portfolio, along with a plan to diversify into hospitality properties, using my connections in the restaurant industry to identify promising opportunities and tenants. You want to buy into the company? Thomas asked incredulously. Now? No, I smiled. I want to merge with it. Fusion Hospitality Group has grown beyond just restaurants. We're positioned to expand into boutique hotels, specialty food markets, and culinary education centers. But we need a strong real estate partner. My father picked up the proposal, his experienced eyes scanning the numbers. These projections are solid, but why should we trust? Because while you were trying to copy my food trucks, I was building a profitable hospitality empire. Because I took every lesson you taught me about real estate and applied it to a new market. And because right now, you need my success more than I need your name. The negotiations took weeks. Thomas fought it initially, but the board, seeing Fusion Hospitality's growth potential, sided with me. In the end, we structured a merger that preserved the best of both companies while charting a new direction. Mitchell & Sons Real Estate became Mitchell Fusion Group, with divisions in traditional real estate, hospitality properties, and culinary enterprises. I took charge of the hospitality division while helping modernize the residential and commercial operations. Thomas eventually found his footing running our commercial division, though he still won't admit that my food truck idea was brilliant. Dad's semi-retired but serves as a consultant, finally accepting that innovation doesn't always mean following the old path. The original Fusion Fiesta food truck sits in the lobby of our corporate headquarters, restored to its former glory. Next to it, a wall displays two photographs. One of Grandma Elena in front of the first Mitchell & Sons office, and one of me serving tacos from that truck on my first day. Last week, a young associate asked to meet with me. She was hesitant, nervous about sharing her unconventional idea for a new division of the company. Some people might think it's crazy, she said, clutching her business plan. I smiled, remembering another young woman holding a food truck lease. Sometimes crazy is just another word for brave. Tell me more. Looking back, leaving Mitchell & Sons wasn't about rejecting my family's legacy. It was about finding my own way to build on it. Real estate taught me about property values, but food taught me about creating value. Both lessons proved essential to building something greater than either could have been alone. The Mitchell name still stands for success in Boston, but now it represents something more. The courage to take risks, the wisdom to trust your instincts, and the understanding that empires can be built on dreams as easily as deeds. Every Sunday, I still cook dinner for Grandma Elena using her recipes. She loves to remind me about the day I left real estate for a food truck. I knew then, she says, watching me make her mole sauce, that you would build something special. Because you weren't afraid to be a little bit crazy. She's right. Sometimes the biggest risk is not taking one at all. Sometimes throwing away your future is the only way to find it. And sometimes the best revenge isn't buying out the family business. It's making it better than it ever was before. The morning of the will reading, I sat in Mr. Patterson's law office trying to ignore the weight of my sister Margaret's smug stare. The leather chair beneath me felt too warm, too constraining, as if it were trying to swallow me whole, just like everything else in my life lately. As we proceed with the reading of Harold and Elizabeth Bennet's last will and testament, Mr. Patterson's voice droned on, but I barely heard him. Instead, I found myself fixated on the gold-framed family photo on his desk. Mom, Dad, Margaret, and me. It was taken the day Margaret graduated from medical school. They all looked so proud, so happy. I wasn't in the photo. I had been working that day, trying to keep the old bookstore running. To our eldest daughter, Margaret Bennett, Mr. Patterson continued, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses, we leave our primary estate valued at $12.4 million. Our vacation home in the Hamptons, all investment portfolios totaling approximately $8.7 million. And the list went on and on. With each item, Margaret's smile grew wider, more satisfied. She sat there in her designer suit, perfectly manicured nails drumming against her leather portfolio, looking every bit the successful neurosurgeon she'd become. And to our younger daughter, Olivia Bennett. Mr. Patterson paused, shuffling his papers. I held my breath, though I already knew what was coming. We leave Bennett's Books, the family bookstore, including all its contents and the building deed. Margaret didn't even try to hide her laugh. "Oh, Liv," she said, her voice dripping with false sympathy, "at least you got something you're familiar with. After all, you've spent the last 10 years of your life wasting away in that dusty old shop." I kept my face carefully blank, though my nails dug crescents into my palms. The bookstore. Of course. The same bookstore that had been bleeding money for years. The same one Dad had called my stubborn mistake when I dropped out of business school to help run it. The same store he'd refused to invest in, claiming it was a dying business in a digital age. "There are some additional documents regarding the bookstore," Mr. Patterson added, sliding a thick envelope across his mahogany desk. "Your father was quite specific about certain aspects of the inheritance." I took the envelope, feeling the weight of it in my hands. It seemed too heavy for just property documents. "Well," Margaret stood, smoothing her skirt, "I should get going. Some of us have important jobs to return to." She paused at the door, turning back with a practiced, concerned expression. "Liv, if you need help selling that old place, just let me know. I'm sure we could find a developer interested in the location." The door clicked shut behind her, leaving me alone with Mr. Patterson. He cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Miss Bennett, Olivia, there's something else you should know. Your father left specific instructions that the bookstore cannot be sold for at least 1 year from his death. Any attempt to sell before then will result in the property reverting to Margaret." I let out a bitter laugh. Of course, one last way to control me from beyond the grave. Carrying the envelope, I left the law office and walked the familiar 3 blocks to Bennett's Books. The store stood exactly as it had for the past 50 years, a 3-story Victorian building with faded blue paint and gold lettering on the windows. The Stilo ZD sign hung crooked on the front door, just as I'd left it this morning. Inside, the smell of old books and wood polish wrapped around me like a familiar blanket. Dust motes danced in the afternoon sunlight streaming through the tall windows. The ancient floorboards creaked beneath my feet as I made my way to the back office. I dropped the envelope on the cluttered desk and sank into the worn leather chair that had been my father's, then mine. A year. I had to keep the struggling business afloat for another year before I could even consider selling it. The irony wasn't lost on me. They'd finally given me the store, but with strings attached that would probably sink me financially. Sighing, I opened the envelope. Property deed, tax documents, insurance papers, and something else. A small leather-bound book fell into my lap, its pages yellow with age. The cover was unmarked except for a small symbol embossed in a corner. A compass rose surrounded by what looked like ancient script. I opened it carefully, the spine crackling. The first page was covered in my father's precise handwriting. "My dearest Olivia, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and you're probably angry with me. You have every right to be. But there are things about Bennett's Books that you don't know. Things I couldn't tell you until now. This store isn't just a bookstore, it never was. The true story begins in 1923, when your great-grandfather first opened these doors. But to understand it, you'll need to go to the basement, the real basement. Behind the false wall in the northwest corner, you'll find a door. The key is taped to the back of this journal. Be careful who you trust with what you find. There are people who have been watching this store for years, waiting for this moment. I'm sorry for everything. I hope one day you'll understand why we had to keep you in the dark." "Dad," my hands trembled as I turned the journal over. Sure enough, taped to the back cover was an old brass key, green with age. I'd worked in this store my entire adult life. How had I never known about a false wall in the basement? I grabbed a flashlight from the desk drawer and headed down the basement stairs, my father's words echoing in my mind. The basement had always been just storage. Old books, damaged inventory, holiday decorations. Nothing special. The northwest corner was stacked with boxes of outdated tax records. It took me 20 minutes to clear them away, revealing a section of wall that looked exactly like every other part of the basement. But when I ran my hands over it, I felt the slightest seam in the plaster. My heart pounding, I pressed against the wall. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a soft click, a section of the wall swung inward, revealing a narrow doorway. The brass key fitted perfectly into the lock. Beyond the door, a set of stairs led down into darkness. The beam of my flashlight revealed walls lined with built-in shelves. But these weren't filled with ordinary books. Each shelf held leather-bound volumes similar to the journal I found, along with boxes, small chests, and objects I couldn't identify. At the bottom of the stairs, I found myself in a room that shouldn't have existed. It was massive, stretching far beyond what should have been possible given the building's foundations. The air felt different here, cooler, charged with something I couldn't explain. Row after row of shelves extended into the shadows, but these weren't filled with normal books. These volumes were locked away behind glass, their spines marked with symbols similar to the one on my father's journal. Display cases held objects that seemed to shimmer in my flashlight beam, crystals, ancient-looking artifacts, things I had no names for. In the center of the room stood a large desk, its surface covered in maps and documents. A logbook lay open, its pages filled with entries in different handwritings. The most recent entry was dated just 3 days ago. Mr. Chen requests access to the cartographer's codex. Payment received. Item will be returned within standard 48-hour window. Below that was a figure that made me catch my breath. $500,000. I sank into the desk chair, my mind spinning. What exactly had my father given me? What was Bennett's books really hiding? Before I could process it all, I heard the bell above the store's front door chime. Footsteps moved across the floor above. "Hello?" a man's voice called out. "I have an appointment regarding one of your special collections." I looked at my father's journal, then at the logbook with its $500,000 transaction. Clearly, there was much more to my inheritance than a dusty old bookstore. Standing up, I straightened my shoulders and headed for the stairs. It was time to find out exactly what kind of business I'd inherited. I climbed the stairs from the hidden basement, my mind racing. The footsteps above continued, moving between the shelves with purpose. This wasn't a casual browser. They knew exactly what they were looking for. Taking a deep breath, I emerged from behind the office door. A man in an impeccable suit stood near the rare book section, his back to me. Even from behind, everything about him screamed money, from his perfectly tailored jacket to his Italian leather shoes. "Can I help you?" I asked, proud that my voice didn't shake. He turned, and I recognized him immediately. Alexander Wright, the tech billionaire who'd been in the news recently for paying $40 million for a rare manuscript. What was he doing in my modest bookstore? "Aha, you must be Harold's daughter," he said, extending his hand. "I'm sorry for your loss. Your father was instrumental in helping me build my private collection." I shook his hand, noting his careful choice of words. "Thank you. I understand you have an appointment." He nodded, glancing around before lowering his voice. "Yes, regarding the Flamel Codex. Your father promised to have it ready for viewing today." The logbook in the basement flashed through my mind. I made a quick decision. "Of course. If you'll follow me?" I led him to the hidden basement, watching his reaction carefully as I opened the concealed door. His expression didn't change. Clearly, he'd been here before. In the basement's strange light, Wright moved with familiar ease to one of the glass cases. "I see Harold kept everything exactly as it should be." "Mr. Wright," I said, settling behind the desk. "Perhaps you could help me understand exactly what kind of business my father was running here." He studied me for a long moment. "He didn't tell you anything, did he?" Typical Harold, always playing things close to the vest. He gestured at the surrounding shelves. "What you see here is one of the most exclusive collections of esoteric and occult manuscripts in the world. But more importantly, it's a lending library for a very select clientele." "A lending library?" I looked at the logbook with its enormous sums. "At $500,000 per loan?" Wright laughed. "For some of the lesser items, yes, the truly valuable pieces." He pointed to a locked case in the corner. "Those can command fees in the millions." Over the next hour, Wright explained everything. Bennett's Books wasn't just a bookstore, it was a front for a highly sophisticated operation that served wealthy collectors of the strange and mysterious. The public store above was real, but it was the basement that generated the true income. "Your father," Wright said, "was a curator of secrets. These books, artifacts, and manuscripts, they contain knowledge that certain people will pay anything to access. But they can't own them outright. The items must stay here, protected, only available for brief, supervised study." "Why?" I asked. "Because some knowledge is too dangerous to be owned privately. Your great-grandfather understood this when he started the collection. Your father continued the tradition, and now," he gestured to me, "now it's your responsibility." I sat back, my mind whirling with implications. The store above has been losing money for years. By design, Wright nodded. The perfect cover. Who would suspect a struggling bookstore of housing one of the world's most valuable private collections? Just then, my phone buzzed. A text from Margaret. Talk to a developer friend. He's willing to offer $800,000 for the building. Think about it, Liv. It's more than that store will make in 20 years. I smiled, thinking of the logbook's most recent entry. The store made that much in 2 transactions. Mr. Wright, I said, about the Flamel Codex. 2 weeks later, I sat in my office, my real office, in the renovated 3rd floor of Bennett's Books. The public store still operated below, but now it was thriving with carefully curated rare editions. The real business, however, continued in the basement. My father's journal had contained everything I needed: client lists, security protocols, pricing structures. The collection had generated over $97 million in lending fees last year alone. No wonder billionaires kept finding excuses to visit our struggling bookstore. The bell above the door chimed. Margaret's voice drifted up from below, talking to one of my employees. I'm looking for my sister, is she in? I heard footsteps on the stairs, then Margaret appeared in my doorway. She stopped short, taking in the completely renovated space with its elegant furniture and state-of-the-art security system. Liv. Her eyes fell on the rare first edition displayed in a climate-controlled case on my wall. Is that a real Gutenberg Bible page? Just a reproduction, I lied smoothly. Did you need something? She seemed flustered by my calm demeanor. I wanted to talk to you about that developer's offer. He's willing to go up to $1 million now. I turned my computer screen toward her, showing the store's latest quarterly report. Margaret's eyes widened as she saw the numbers. That's impossible. How? Turns out rare books are quite profitable if you know the right collectors. I stood up. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a client meeting. A Saudi prince is interested in viewing some of our special collection. Special collection? Margaret's voice rose. What special collection? It's just a dusty old bookstore. I smiled, remembering all the times she'd mocked my choice to work here. You know, Margaret, that's exactly what Mom and Dad wanted everyone to think. They were very good at keeping secrets. I paused. By the way, how's the new house hunting going? I heard the Hamptons property needs extensive repairs. She flushed. The inheritance she'd received, while substantial, came with its own headaches. Property taxes, maintenance costs, investment management fees. Meanwhile, I had inherited a turnkey operation that practically printed money. I don't understand, she said finally. Dad always said this place was worthless. No, I corrected her. Dad always said knowledge is priceless. We just assumed he was being philosophical. I checked my watch. My client will be here soon. We can catch up at the next family dinner. I'm hosting at my new penthouse. After she left, I went down to the basement. The secret room hummed with its usual energy, the collected knowledge of centuries waiting patiently on its shelves. My father's journal lay open on the desk. I'd finally finished reading it all. The story of Bennett's Books was more incredible than I'd imagined. 5 generations of my family serving as guardians of forbidden knowledge, keepers of secrets that the wealthy and powerful would pay fortunes just to glimpse. My phone buzzed. Another client requesting access to the collection. The fee would be $2.3 million for 48 hours of supervised study. I smiled as I typed my response. The bookstore above might look like a relic of the past. But down here, business was booming. Opening a logbook, I began a new entry. My handwriting joined the generations that had come before me, continuing a legacy hidden in plain sight. Let the world think Bennett's Books was just another struggling bookstore. Sometimes the best treasures are the ones nobody knows exist. Margaret could keep her millions. I had inherited something far more valuable. A secret empire built on humanity's endless hunger for forbidden knowledge. And business, I thought as I heard the front door chime again, was very good indeed.